is up, friends? So here, actually, yeah, okay, it is working. It seems really quiet. I'm not sure if I can make that any louder. But anyway, I am going to be practicing my talk for React Universe. This is my first go through. I have a feeling that I'm going to go a little bit over. So we'll just see how much over, and then I can know how much I need to cut. It'll probably be a lot. So I can also be kind of wordy yeah, especially when I'm jet lagged, which is now. So yeah, this is for React Universe, which is not tomorrow, but the next day. Tomorrow I'm giving a workshop though, so I won't have a ton of time to practice. So it's good that I'm practicing now. And then I'm going to go to sleep because, again, jet lag. So let me share my screen and we can get this going. The talk is titled Abracadabra. Okay. Hey everybody, my name is Kent. Oh, and actually before I get into that, feel free to join my Discord. There should be, my bot should have made a channel for this where we can chat and you can leave me feedback and stuff in there. Or, gosh, I'll look at the code comments and stuff as well. Also, I turned off the air conditioning because it was making this funny noise, but it's making that funny noise anyway. So we'll turn it back on, and then at least it will be cold while it makes that funny noise. Okay, so yeah, feel free to throw feedback my way as we go, and I'll review it when I'm done. So 6:39 my time. Here we go. Hey everyone, my name is Kent C. Dodds, and I am excited to be here in Poland for React Universe. This is going to be super awesome. My talk is titled Abracadabra, React and the Vanishing Network. I am the creator of epicreact.dev. How many of you all are using that? Okay, great. Version 2 is coming out in just like 2 or 3 weeks. So keep an eye out for that. It's all updated to the latest React and TypeScript and all the wonderful stuff. So it's going to be awesome. Before we get started though, your brain needs to wake up. And so we're going to do this. Everybody stand up. I'm going to do this right now too. You can, if you're watching, feel free. You're going to stand up, put your arms out in front of you like this, and then squat down and come back up. This is called an air squat. We're going to do 12 of these together to get blood flowing. We all need this. Okay, and I want you to count out loud with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. You're doing awesome. Keep going. 4, 5, 6. Halfway there. 7, 8, 9, 10. And just 2 more, 11 and 12. Now stretch over your head as high as you can, then over to one side and to the other. All right, awesome. You can sit down. I will probably not be sitting down. I'll be sitting at a podium or standing at a podium, but that's all right. Actually, there's no way for me to. There is, okay. While everybody is sitting down, I'm going to be constructing a podium, because I feel more comfortable practicing with a podium. So here we go. This is maybe a little too tall. Yep, too tall. Rats. Okay. Well, that's not gonna work. There's nowhere else. Nothing else for me to construct a podium out of, so that's okay. We'll be sitting. Deduct 30 seconds for that. Okay. Your brain needs this. It's good. It's good for your brain. All right, I want to tell you a quick story before we get into what I have prepared for you, and that is years and years ago, early in my career, I was working on an app for a company called Domo, and this is a demo of the app. It's a business intelligence application. We take in a bunch of data and then we give you charts and alerts and all sorts of cool things. And I was given the task once of adding a checkbox to this interface. It wasn't actually this one. In fact, the user interface, this is a lot more modern than what I was working on at the time. But we're going to just pretend that this is the checkbox. Now, I wasn't sure how long it was going to take. I'd never worked in this area. Well, I think I had worked in this area of the code base, and I was a little nervous because this is what that code looked like. and we're going to look at this in detail, starting right here. Well, no, just kidding. We're not actually going to look at this in detail. This is not actually what the code was, except for the fact that it was like 3,000 or 2,000 lines of code. It was just a ridiculous amount of code. So not fun at all. So how much do you think it took for me to do that? And it wasn't just like, this is one file. It was a Backbone.js base view. Anybody here use Backbone.js? Those were the days. But it's just huge, a single class-like thing. How long do you think this took? If you guess 2 weeks, then you feel my pain. It was awful for a single checkbox. So why did it take so long to add a single checkbox? And the answer is network management. Loading the data for that checkbox, getting it into the model, and then displaying it on in that UI, and allowing the user to mutate it and persist that option. So that was awful. It was a terrible experience. I have bad experiences with network management, and I would like that to stop. So we're going to make our network management disappear like magic. And we're going to do that right now. I'm going to be live coding. And actually, this is a workshop that I put together. So you can go to this. I'll have a link to this workshop at the end. And it's like full of instructions and everything. You can go through all of this stuff. And so we're going to start with the early web. And we're going to work our way to where we are now with modern React features, and how we're going to keep track of where the network code is that we're writing. So starting with the early web, we're going to be working on an MPA. So our users want a counter component. And so we are building an MPA, a multi-page app. This is Hano.js. And we already have all of this code. So you'll see we're rendering out HTML with the head and body and all of this stuff. So we just need to render out the count in a form for updating the count. So let's get our count from the database. And then right here, we're going to have an H1 for that count. And yeah, let's add our form, action, update count, and method post. And then we've got, we'll handle that over here. And then we have our buttons for decrement and increment. Let's make these both type submit. Submit, there we go. And if I save this and refresh, now we've got our counter. Perfect. Clicking on this, though, is going to result in a 404. We need to handle that. So let's add this. At post, we'll handle a post at update count. So that's associated to this action here. And then we're going to get the form data from the request. And then we'll get the change from that form data. And we'll change the count, and then we'll redirect. We're using the post redirect get pattern, which allows us to avoid issues with the back button resubmitting forms and stuff. So we'll redirect to the home page, and that will trigger a re-render of our page. So increment, boom, decrement. Haha, this totally works. All right, we're winning. So let's think about where the network code is in our application. Well, so first, I mean, we've got this handler here. The browser is going to make a request for that. Then we have our form. We're specifying an action. So there's a little bit of level of indirection between this action and this handler that maybe a framework could kind of help with a little bit, I guess. But there's actually not a lot of our code that is required for managing the data loading and the data mutations across the network. We're loading data straight from the database right here. So there's no network stuff going on there. And then the browser is the one that's handling the form submission. And so we don't have any network code ourselves. We're just handling that request. So like maybe a little bit, but not a whole lot of network stuff going on here with the multi-page apps. And that's pretty cool. So our users can count things, they're happy, but we're a little bit limited because every single time we click on the button, the page is going to refresh. And now, like, I know we have view transitions and stuff to make it look like it's a single page app, but certainly we're kind of exploring history. And at the time, years ago, that wasn't a thing. You couldn't just have view transitions. And so there were a number of things that full page refresh made not so great. And we also want to have some nice pending UI. So we decide, okay, we need to add some JavaScript to the page. So we're going to keep everything working as it is. So this is all still working. But now I want to have some JavaScript that is going to handle the submission on the client side. So let's add that. Document add event listener, DOM content load, and then we'll get our form. And here's our add a listener to the form. And yeah, we've actually got a couple of things that are done for us by our AI assistant, but not quite everything. We also need our counter buttons. We are going to prevent the default behavior because we don't want the full page refresh. We're going to add some pending UI. This will just make our buttons a little transparent. Then we'll turn our form into the form data. We'll serialize that. And if the form, or the event.submitter exists, so the user clicked on a submit button, then we're going to append the submitter, event submitter value, or yeah, name, to that value. So like whichever button they're clicking on, that's going to be the submitter, and that's how we know which one of these to append. So the browser does this for us. We have to do this ourselves inside of our event handler. And then from that, we're going to use the form action to know where to fetch to. We'll also use the form method as well. And then if the response is good, then we will turn it into JSON. So we need to return JSON from this so that we can update the inner text of our count. Otherwise, we will say that failed. And then we'll have this opacity set to 1. And we need to actually wrap all this in a try-catch, right? Because if it blows up, we don't want to leave the opacity where it is. So let's add this try-catch, move all this stuff into here. And in fact, this should probably throw that. And then here we'll add that into a finally. That way we always make sure we're updating this opacity back to 1. Okay. Cool. So now let's get this JavaScript onto the page so it can effectuate some change. So coming over here to our index, we'll add a module script for our UI index. And then we also need to be able to access the form and the counter buttons and the count. So we need to add a bunch of IDs to that. So I'll say ID count and counter form. And then we need to wrap the buttons inside of a class div, and actually it's an ID counter buttons. There we go. And div. There we go. So with those, we also need to update our update count here. So we're going to get our updated count from this change count. And then we want to make sure, well, here, I'll talk about that here in a second. So we're going to just comment this out. We're going to return JSON for that. So let's save that, refresh, and we're getting, oh, that's not good. Click on that. I wasn't actually, this is a problem that I'm expecting, but not right just yet. It shouldn't be doing that. Oh, right. One other thing we need to do is turn this off first. Here we go. Let's come over here to our network. We'll turn this off too. We also need to start serving that UI directory as static files so our JavaScript can show up on the page. And we're getting a syntax error of some kind. Well, that is, oh, right, serve static. Here we go. Also need serve static. And there we go. Okay, so now I increment. You'll notice we are not getting a full page refresh. You can take a look at the network, and we're making these post requests. It's exactly what I want to have happen. I refresh the page, and everything is rendered properly, exactly as it was. I can refresh, and I can increment, I can refresh again. Everything looks the way that it should. Now, we want to progressively enhance with JavaScript. We don't want to remove the previous behavior, and so I'm going to disable JavaScript on this page, and it's not working because we're sending JSON back. So what we're going to do is, if the accept header includes text HTML, then that's probably the browser making this request, and we'll return a redirect. Otherwise, we'll send back that JSON. And so now I can increment, and I'm getting full page refreshes for this. And then when I enable JavaScript again, I can increment, and we're not getting full page refreshes. And if I slow down the network, then you'll see we get that pending state. So sweet, we've just progressively enhanced our user experience. It's a lot better experience. And what did it cost? That is the big question. Well, now we actually have a ton of code that is related to managing the network. So like data loading, that really didn't change a whole lot. We are still loading that from the server. But as we make different changes and things, we have to manage the responses and make sure that our UI gets updated, both here and here. And if you scale this out to a really big application, this becomes pretty unruly and actually a big point of frustration and pain, because what happens if somebody says, hey, you know what, I want this to say count with an exclamation point. Then we say, okay, yeah, we can do that. And then they increment, and whoa, that changed. And now I refresh, and whoa, it's different. So this became a big problem in the early days of building this type of application, is you just have this duplication between how the JavaScript is updating the page versus how it's rendered originally by the server. So this duplication led us to the next phase of architecture. And we didn't even consider the fact that we're adding all of this extra code, because it's adding this code is giving us something of value. But like now, if you're keeping track, we're not watching the network vanish. We're actually watching it expand in the code that we're having to write, which is a bit of a pain. So that is the PEMPA, or what I call a progressively enhanced multi-page app. Now we're starting to get into the early React days and some of the problems that multi-page apps experienced, and PEMPA's, progressively enhanced multi-page apps experienced, and why React became so popular and why it's so useful. So let's take a look at what it's like, especially in the early days, for single-page applications built with React to work. So now things have been changed. We have Kelly, the coworker in our workshop, who is kind of helping us with all of this stuff. The application is still the way that it is, but it doesn't, and it actually technically still works. But we want to have everything be managed by React so that we don't have to have all this duplication between the front end and the back end. So let's come over here to our API, and what we're going to do is actually completely obliterate this. We've moved this over to now an index.html, which is loading our JavaScript, and we got a div with an ID of root, and so that is going to manage that for us now. We're going to replace this with a JSON API. So we have count, and then we're going to return JSON. And then update count also, we're going to change this to be, or to use JSON data. So this is going to be body, and this will be JSON, and then this will be simply body.change. Okay, and now we don't care about progressive enhancement anymore, because this is a SPA, and SPAs don't care about progressive enhancement. So we're going to get rid of that. This is just a JSON API now. And we have to update things to serve from our public directory. And on top of that, we're also going to make it so that if the server doesn't find anything, then send it over to the index.html and send that with a 200. So we don't believe in 404s anymore in the SPA world, because the client-side router might have something that we need to serve. So we're going to handle all of the other requests that don't match anything else and just send the index.html and let the client-side handle that. So we've just abandoned a bunch of things from the platform and said, hey, we know better. We're going to do this differently. So now, if I refresh the page, we're going to get that index.html. And actually, hold on a second. This is, This is working and it shouldn't be. Honestly, this should be blowing up. Oh, here we go. FS is not defined. Where the heck is FS coming from? Oh, that's interesting. I have practiced this before, and I never ran into that. Okay, here, let's try that again. And this should not be working. And there's that gnat. There's been a gnat flying around my room. Where did you go? Ah, no, go away. Dang it. I almost committed murder on a live stream. Murder of a gnat. Okay, anyway. Yeah, okay, so some of it is rendering. I'm surprised that we're even getting count 0. I shouldn't dwell on this at all. But yeah, this is not working yet because we need to add all of our network logic. So here's how you do network logic in the early days of React. We're going to make our initial state. We have our count is null. Oh, that's why. There it is right there. I pre-filled the state. Our loading is false. Error is null. Okay, awesome. And then actually, we'll start out our state with loading is true because we're clever and we know that we're going to start loading right away. So then let's create our function for our count reducer. And that's close, but we actually also want to handle the case update start. There we go. So, man, it just flew right in my face. Yeah. And I like to have curly braces around my cases. Thank you very much. So when the fetch and update start, then loading is set to true. Fetch and update success, then the count is whatever the payload was, and loading is false. Fetch and update error, then our error is the payload, and loading is false. And then in the default case, we actually want to throw an error invalid action type action.type, right? This should be very familiar for a lot of you who have been doing React for a long time. Okay, here's my reducer for managing this asynchronous state. And we're going to switch to using useReducer. So our state comes from that. We need to have useEffect to fetch the component on mount. So let's make an async function called fetchCount. That'll dispatch the fetch start. And when we'll make a fetch to that count endpoint we just created, and then we'll parse the JSON response, dispatch fetch success or the fetch error. And then we need to, of course, call this and ignore the promise. So I'll say void to make it like, I didn't forget, I just meant like throw this promise into the ether and void, forget about it. So that'll initialize this properly. Sweet. Okay, good. And then we need to make an update count function. We're calling that in our buttons here. Notice the buttons are no longer surrounded by a form anymore. Who needs a form? We don't even handle the form submission anyway. So like, I'm not going to even bother with prevent default, right? So we'll add our update count here. This is going to handle the update start. This needs to be async. Thank you, cursor. We'll fetch to update count. We'll make a post to that. And then we'll stringify the change. And then take the JSON response and dispatch update success or update error, and we're all solid. Awesome, awesome stuff. And now, if our state is loading and we haven't loaded the count yet, then we will return loading. If there's an error, then we'll return the error state. This all should be so familiar to so many of you. I hope I see nodding heads out there. This is like standard React stuff. It's so standard that even the AI knows exactly what to do. And this is like, there are a bunch of things that we lost when we went to single page apps, moving from Peppas to spas. But there are some things that we gained. One thing that we gained was now there's no duplication across the front end and the back end code. And so it's all just this UI code that's right here. We also, before we were kind of managing network and stuff. Now it kind of feels like we're doing that even more than we were before. Like there's a lot going on here. But really we're not, like we just weren't properly managing those things with the Pempa stuff. There's still like errors and different things we don't really display in that example. So we went from MPAs and then we really expanded our role and responsibility as far as the network is concerned, and now we've just got so much code that has to worry about the network when it all just comes down to I need to have the state count and I need to have a mechanism for updating it, and this is the UI that I show for that. And it's a real shame because now when we have a slow network connection, we have to wait with this loading state while we wait for all of the JavaScript to load. And in fact, even the JavaScript is required to show that loading state. And so we started doing like static site generation so we could instantly show our users useless information. Like, okay, sure, thank you. So even with static site generation, anything that was dynamic had to come in from APIs, and it just, I don't think that is awesome. It's not an awesome user experience, not an epic user experience. And so, and on top of that, the developer experience is also not fantastic. And so that is why we built frameworks. So moving on to Framework React, this is the phase that I call Progressively Enhanced Single Page Applications, or PESPA, P-E-S-P-A. And so with Progressively Enhanced Single Page Applications, the framework can kind of manage a lot of the network for you, which is really, really awesome. And it reduces the amount of worry that you have to have in how the network is managed for you. So let's go back here. Here we go. Now, I'm not going to look into the details of this, but I've built a mini framework that resembles Remix in many ways. So we have a loader, an action, and use the loader data. So if you've never seen Remix before, this won't be very familiar to you. And it's a little bit magical how I'm making all of this work. But the basic idea is the loader and action run on the server, and only on the server, and won't show up in the client. And then our default export, our component export, from a route perspective, is going to load in the client. And so what that means is now I can grab the DB module, and I can talk to the database directly. I can use private keys. I can do whatever I want to inside this loader. And then we can do similar for our action. We're taking that request. Let's get the form data from that, turn that into a number, update the count, and then say success. So we're in a good place. Except this isn't update, it's change count. If I'm not mistaken, let's double check. Yeah, change count. Oh, you just saw my database. So, great. So that's working. And then in our UI, we're going to get our data from useLoaderData. And then we're also going to use this useFetcher thing. This is a part of the framework. This is resembling the Remix API, but the basic idea is that the framework is going to offer you a special form component. So we brought our form back. And so this fetcher.form will allow us to use a form like it normally is. So we have our method post. We could put an action in here. I'm just going to post to the current page. So you leave off the action, and that is a post to the current page. And then our action is going to get called. And so there's a lot less indirection going on here, and we can really easily just say fetcher.isPending for our pending state. So you take a look at this, and you actually don't see a whole lot of concern as far as like the level of indirection or anything like that for our routes, which is the way that we're managing the network. The network is kind of starting to disappear. And that is pretty cool, thanks to this framework. So now I can increment, I can decrement, and this still, thanks to the progressively enhanced piece of this, this is working without any JavaScript on the page. Now, why does that matter? I thought all of my users are using JavaScript. Yeah, they probably are. But what's really cool about this, okay, there it is. Did I get it? No, I didn't. It was right in front of my face. It's like it's tempting me. Hopefully that gnat doesn't follow me for the actual talk. No, most of our users, they do have JavaScript on the page, but sometimes loading the page takes a second. And so while this is still loading, I can actually submit this form, and it actually works before I wait for all the JavaScript to load. this is a pretty cool capability. And also I forgot to enable scripts again. So here, let's do this for realsies this time. So click on that. The JavaScript never finished, and I was able to submit the form. And so this is what progressive enhancement is all about, is making that better experience, but it also enhances the developer experience as well, because it allows us to have this network disappearing effect that we had with multi-page apps, where there was just like no indirection. It was super, super great. And so, yeah, that's something that I just really want to point out. And I think in my actual talk, I'm going to update this to have an action for update count, so that this is a little bit better. Or maybe we'll just say /count or something like that. That will make it a little bit more clear. And maybe even I'd say count or counter or something like this, just to make it a little more obvious. Like, there is some framework stuff going on here, and this is bound to a route, which is probably the biggest drawback of the PESPA architecture, is that these things are bound to a route. And so here is an example of something that I call a full stack component, where you can have a component that is in the same module as its loader, and then you can reuse that component in a bunch of places. The drawback with that is the remix, at least, doesn't have any way to associate that loader with that component, and so you have to manually wire those things up. And then secondly, if we needed to preload this combo box with some of the results or something, then we need to go to the nearest route boundary, because the route boundaries are where the composition happens. And that is not the case in React. React has components, and that's where composition happens. And so this is where React server components come in and make things much, much better. Server components and actions. So our coworker Kelly put together a React server component framework for us to use. This is not any framework that you're familiar with. It's just I made it, and it's really actually quite cool, and it all fits inside of this little directory right here, built on top of some packages from the React repo. Thank you, Sebastian Mokboge. So there are a couple of things that we need to do to get everything working now. We need to add a use server directive to this, because we have this action, and we want to pass or reference that action in the client. So when a form is submitted, this action could be called. And so by using use server, we're indicating, hey, this module, it has stuff that can be referenced by the client-side JavaScript. Okay, but it is still a server, so I can import the database in here. I have our update count. Let's actually perform that update. So db change count with that change. And then we can get the count directly from the database right here. And then the other thing that we want to do, because we want to have some pending UI, the drawback with the way that we were doing things with the multi-page app is we had to add JavaScript to the client. And remember, we had to add the script tag and wire all of those things together, like so many layers of indirection. Okay, add an ID here, and then use that same ID in the JavaScript so we can associate those things. That was a real pain. And then we had a bunch of duplication. Just so that we could prevent the full page refresh and add some pending state. Well, now with React Server Components, we don't have to worry about adding any script tags or having layers of indirection. I'm literally going to say, hey, let's swap this for the pending div component. And that's in a separate file, because this code does need to go to the client. And so we're going to add a use client directive right here and say, hey, this code goes to the client, and our pending state comes from the use form status. Whoops, keep on making that mistake. There we go. And use form status, it requires some client-side code to work. And so that's why we have this use client. And we're able to take this component, this async component that's running on the server, and pass along some instructions to React to say, hey, I need this pending div in the client. I need the code for that pending div in the client, so it can reference the form information to determine whether we're in a pending state. And all of that is done without any sort of JavaScript script tags or anything. So now, here, let's go no throttling. Try that again. What is going on? Oh, it busted. I messed something up. Oh, right. We need to restart the server because the way that this is all wired together, it's a little bit different. So the watch mode failed us. So restarting the server now. Refresh this. That looks like it's in a permanent pending state. So what's going on there? Oh, my bad. Pending. There we go. Actually, I'm going to blame AI on that one. Yeah, okay, good. So we're going to increment and decrement, and if we slow this down to a 3G connection, take a look. We've got pending UI, and let's explore this a little bit. Somebody find me any network-related code at all in my product code. I'll give you 10 bucks, or I don't know what the currency here in Poland is called, but I'll give you 10 of those. If you can find any, oh, there it is, the net again. Duh. If you can find any network-related code in here. Now compare this to the progressively enhanced multi-page app, which didn't have a lot. Well, actually it did. It did. It had actually quite a lot. But if all we wanted to do was add some pending UI, then it wouldn't have a lot. You would need a script tag, and then you would have just like on submit, add some pending, and then maybe you'd have to figure out some way to say like when that submission is done. Maybe the browser gives you events for that. I don't actually know. Because we don't need to, like, why would you go that far when you can just use this? But there's no network code in here. In that you had a script tag. That's network related stuff. In here you don't. There's nothing. Once you have the framework set up, then this is what you're writing every day. You're referencing a freaking function in this stuff that ends up in the client. It's magic. It's amazing. It is so cool. The DX of React Server Components and Server Actions is phenomenal. And there are definitely rough edges because this is different from the way that we're typically used to working. Like you'd say, hey, well, why did I need to make this in a totally separate file? Why couldn't I just put the pending div right here? That's what I want. What did I just do? I want to just stick that pending div right here. Why can't I do that? And so yes, there are some things to learn and some understanding to develop around these different boundaries that we have. But there's no network code going on in here. You do still need to understand those network boundaries, but the framework can help you with that. And you don't really have to think about it, which I just think is so sick. It's so awesome. And I'm really, really excited for Remix to add support for React Server Components. I will start using them instantly. It is phenomenal. I'm very excited. And what's really exciting is that this is built into React as a first-class feature of React. And so whatever framework you're using, when it supports React Server Components, your product code will look like this. It doesn't have to look like some framework-specific thing. It can be React. And that, I think, is cool. And React has made the network disappear. There's a lot of really cool implications there. I'm very excited about that. So that's everything that I had to share for you. We went on a journey from multi-page apps to single-page apps, and then progressively enhanced single-page apps and React Server Components. I skipped over Pempas, but yeah, you get the idea. It's super cool. And I welcome you to go through this. It's, as you saw, it has all the instructions and everything to help you through that. So the network has vanished. Epic React V2 is coming up very soon. I'm excited for it. I hope you are too. Stay tuned. And I just have one last thing to share with you, and that's you're super. Thank you very much. Okay, great. Let's see how we did on time. So the time is 7:17. I started at 6:40, and then I had like a couple of bumps here and there, not much, but a couple of things. So yeah, I have a half hour, less than a half hour. I went over by like 5 minutes. I think I can tighten it up by practicing a couple more times. But yeah, let's see if there are any relevant bits of feedback or anything. I'm going to switch to just me, just in case some DMs show up in here and people don't expect me to live stream their DMs. So let's take a look at the live stream chat. Nobody chatted in the live stream chat. That's fine. So yeah, thank you for watching and joining for this fun and exciting event. And like I said, feedback is welcome, so feel free to leave that as I wrap things up. Oh my gosh, it's Danny. What is up, Danny? Love you, man. See you next week. What? It's going to be sick. So yeah, anyway, thanks everybody for joining. And I'm going to, I think I'm going to fix just that one thing at the end with the remix emulated framework so that we can have an action on there. Yeah, so that's it. I noticed some of you are asking questions that are not relevant to what I am doing right now, and that's totally fine. You totally can do that. I'm just not going to answer. If you do want to ask a question, then let me share my screen and show you where you can ask that. I have a podcast where you can ask questions. You can make a recording, and I selected the wrong microphone, so make sure that you select the right microphone because I am not at home. Nope, that's also the wrong one. Here it is. So yeah, then you record your question in here, and I will listen to it. And I'll answer your question, and our conversation will turn into a podcast episode, and that will be awesome. So feel free to ask questions there. Also, I have office hours, and you can come on Thursdays, except not this Thursday because I will be in Poland and busy at the conference. But normally I will be available, and you can check my schedule on my live streams channel. So not this week or next week because I'm going to be at Epic Web Camp with Danny, and it's going to be sick. But yeah, in the following weeks, I can answer your questions. So feel free to come at those times. I will not be answering any unrelated questions at this time. Now, let me just double check this. I don't see any other comments in here, so I'm going to take off. Thanks, everybody, and I will see you in the future. Doo-doo-doo.